Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be discussing 2021. Yes, we've reached the end of 2021 and let's see what's gone on. We're doing a year in review. But first, show reel, hit it. Welcome back to my channel, everyone. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second and it really helps with my YouTube algorithm. And also the notification button so that I can share some great videos like this with you. I don't want you to miss anything in the future. The last 2 years have been crazy and unprecedented in so many ways. This, of course, was precipitated by the pandemic. Toronto real estate prices have shown massive growth over the past couple of years. Now, in fact, the benchmark price hit 1.188700 in November, which is up 28.3% from just a year before. And it may come as a surprise to you when that information came from the Canadian Real Estate Association, which actually showed that Toronto's one of the slowest growing markets in Ontario. In fact, what we've seen is smaller cities are growing 3 times faster and closing the gap on our big smoke, Toronto, our city. The 28% growth that we've seen is huge and it's unprecedented for the city, but somehow that massive annual growth was the second slowest of any major market in Ontario. So take a typical home, for instance. Yes, it's increased about 67.8% over the past 5 years and almost 500% in the last 2 decades. Yeah, it's been a huge growth. But despite this, the steep climb that Toronto has seen in sales and in prices, this still lands Toronto in last place as a major Ontario market. We've seen many of the market trends from the latter half of the previous year continue. Following a drop in prices and activity early in the pandemic that we did see in 2020, throughout 2020, there was a strong rebound throughout 2021. What followed has been a strong stretch of broken records that nobody could have ever predicted. So what was the actual impact of the pandemic? Well, let's talk about this. So there's no denying that this year has actually been unlike any other year. In 2021, the real estate market in Toronto was defined by an extremely tight market. There were tight market conditions and this really shattered sales records. So for instance, in the spring market, we actually saw strong sales growth with record-breaking levels reported in January, February, and March. During these months, the average sales prices jumped. So for instance, in January, 15.5%, February, 14.9%, and 21.6% in March, year over year. And then in the early months, the supply of detached homes was actually low, and the demand for them, especially among first-time buyers, was actually very high. And from the beginning of the year through to this spring, the sales growth volume grew exponentially. So there were more than 70,000 properties sold during this period. This represented an unprecedented first half of any year in the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board's history. And in terms of the home sales, they actually broke records. There were 15,652 transactions in March, which was up 97% year over year. And the average price was $1,097,565, which increased 21.6%. The transactions actually slowed between May and June, with only 11,951 sales in May, which was more than double the result of the May previous. But May 2021 sales were below the May 2016 record, which was very much a record back then, still remained well above the average sales records reported from 2010 all the way to 2019. So often May is a very strong spring month. But 2021 actually bucked this trend with their sales below March's record. So June sales actually fell even below May sales, but we're still up 28.5% year over year. The activity actually picked up again late in the year as prices and sales continued to surge. To give you an idea, if we look at the overall market in all of Canada, October actually marked the highest count of sales in history across all of Canada, which surpassed the annual record of real estate sales in Canada for all of 2020. But that wasn't exactly the same for Toronto. But interestingly, year over year, the sales growth was strongest in the condominium market segment. So one sure stopgap in this whole real estate factor is the fact that we have boomers, we have Gen Xers, and we have millennials that are all in the home ownership years at the same time. They're squeezing what they can out of this available market, and the supply is just drying up. With this tight market, we often see the crunch, and where those who wanted to actually sell, they really didn't have very many options to move to. So there's also the pace of new homes being built, but it really is outstripped by the high demand as well. So it's sort of like a catch-22. The pandemic has always played a huge role in influencing sales throughout 2020, 2021. Although max vaccination and fewer lockdowns have actually helped business operations mostly return to normal, the COVID-19 pandemic still has played a huge role in influencing market trends and also behaviors of buyers and sellers in 2021. So for instance, the importance of home still rings true for many current and hopeful buyers in the market that are waiting to get into the market. So existing homeowners may have outgrown the needs of their current property, for instance, and they've continued to generate movement throughout and sales across the country. However, there are always options for these homeowners to move. These homeowners that want to move have to be extra patient, they have to be extra creative and work with their real estate agent and have a good real estate agent which will actually help them. And it's very important to have a backup plan. You might have to have bridge financing. The panic of having to move to a bunker and ride out the pandemic definitely subsided. Definitely been a seller's market as a whole throughout all of 2021. We saw record-breaking numbers. Detached homes continued to be a hot commodity throughout the entire 2021. The condo market eventually became very much a healthy market as buyers actually began to take advantage of the bargains they actually found. The sub-$1 million options were actually available throughout 2021, which is hard to sometimes find in the GTA, especially if you're looking for more than one bedroom units in hot areas. So even though things slowed down slightly in the summer, they picked back up in the fall. And that said, overall, this unprecedented year will be remembered as a year of high sales volume, high prices, and conditions that have actually very strongly favored the sellers. So the conditions that have been very favorable and have made this such a tight market throughout 2021 is that consumer lending rates were sitting around 1.5%, especially variable rates, and sometimes even lower. The fixed rates were often under 2% for much of the year. Money was extremely cheap to borrow, and this has actually perpetuated the fact that people have always had ready access to this money, which explains why prices have actually skyrocketed this year. And I've always said this, you could actually tax to the max, but unless the government actually steps in and makes money harder to borrow, or if an investment property or an investor owner has to put more money down or is forced to put more money down as a down payment rather than just putting down a minimum amount, or there's more supply, the market's really not going to cool down. I mean, inflation's at an all-time high, and this is great if you own property. if you own assets, if you own stocks. But, you know, in that case, you'll become wealthier. But if you don't, then that's obviously problematic. You're just trying to get into the market. But the Bank of Canada actually held very strong. And this has led to this demand. Let's talk about the rental market for a second. The rental market actually picked up once again. Before the pandemic, this market was really suffering due to the fact that the short-term rental markets were banned. The market has actually slowly, over the course of the year, has actually really come back. It's really rebounded. And although it's not back to where it was at its peak, it's absolutely way more competitive than it was this time last year. At one point, there were over 10,000 units available on the market in 2021, but right now when we're just looking at condos, etc., we're looking at about 3,500 condo apartment type units right now. So way less than we did see previously. And this low inventory has caused prices to continue to increase. Now, what else has happened this year is there was an election. Now the Liberals won the minority government. Wherever you sit on the political spectrum, this is not up for a discussion today. I'm sure it's very interesting, but it's way beyond the scope of today's discussion. The Liberals have made a lot of promises, especially when it came to real estate. For instance, they wanted to ban blind bidding. This is where the sellers know what the bids are, but the buyers don't. Now, I don't think getting rid of blind bidding will actually fix the affordability issue. If you think differently, leave that in the comments below. I think there's a thought that with transparency around bidding, it's somehow going to make homes a little bit more affordable, but it may work in the opposite manner. I mean, we have to wait and see how this is going to play out. Bringing more transparency in the industry is definitely a good thing, and I'm all for that. So this remains to be seen. Now, the Liberals also promised no foreign buyers for the next 2 years. This has definitely not happened yet. Foreign buyers are still buying up properties, and they represent roughly around 5% of buyers in Canada. We will see if the Liberals actually follow through on this promise to ban foreign buyers. Also, the Liberals proposed a speculation tax on investors that are buying and flipping properties in less than a year's time. Now, that can be a really good idea. So if you purchase a house and you have to move within a 6-month period because maybe you were transferred or there's unforeseen circumstances, you have to relocate because a family member's ill or for one reason or another, you'll get an exemption. So they're really only targeting the flippers and the floppers, and you know, we're hoping that actually will put an end to that. I'm hoping that whatever money the government actually gets through this speculation tax, this will be put back into building more homes and making homes more affordable throughout Toronto. You know, the Liberals also have talked about immigration targets, and they've always been pushing for immigration, which is great. And there used to be about 250,000 new immigrants per year. Now the 400,000 is the true target. So this is what makes Toronto so awesome, is the mixed cultures. You know, in other episodes, I talk about how Toronto is such a melting pot of different cultures. It's a great city to live in, and with over 155 distinct neighborhoods, which I discuss in other episodes, the city of Toronto is a city of neighborhoods. I mean, we've got Chinatown, we've got Greektown, we have Koreatown, we have Little Poland, we have Little Italy, just to name a few. What also has been on the agenda is a vacant home tax. This will start sometime in 2022. So by imposing the speculative tax as well as no foreign buyers, it's sort of addressing one angle of the coin. But there's so much more we could do to make this housing issue less problematic and to make homes much more affordable. It's a big, big issue. So the Liberals have won, and since they've won, we are waiting to see what they actually do and how it affects our real estate market. So one more thing I want to address is the fact that there's a lot of discussion about a vacancy tax. And so if one leaves a property vacant throughout the year, this can be a huge issue. And some people have actually forgotten to self-declare. So every year you would actually have to declare if your property is actually vacant or if it's been rented out. And if it's sitting vacant, say it's sitting vacant for the year, then you'll be hit by a tax of 1% of the assessed value. So if $1 million property in Toronto is assessed at $700,000, 7,000 right off the bat because it was left vacant. And for a decent property in Toronto, you could actually probably rent this for at least $3,000, if not more. So you're losing close to $40,000 per year leaving this empty with tax and lost rent. So our mayor John Tory has actually indicated that the money collected from the vacancy tax will actually be used to make more housing and more affordable housing. So we'll see if this actually happens. Will the vacancy tax somehow make homes more affordable in 2022? Likely not, but this remains to be seen. So to summarize, there's been a lot of issues throughout 2021, like affordability. This was a huge issue. There's been low interest rates, ultra low interest rates. There's been a huge demand. The inflation rate's been at an all-time high. We had an election with a slew of promises. We'll have to keep this on our radar and see how this plays out. We have a vacancy tax in the horizon, speculative tax, possibility of blind bidding. Where are the builders going to build? Take a look at the aerial view of Toronto and let me know, because we're running out of space. The only place we have is to build up, which is why you're seeing a lot of condos. Any little space they can find, they'll build big buildings. Condos are and are continuing to be an affordable option for families. So that's what we're starting to see more and more. And really, we have seen condos go up, and interestingly enough, we actually saw semi-detached homes go up the highest throughout 2021. So when we look at all the homes across the segment of the real estate market, January at the beginning of the year, all the way through to what we have stats for now, which is November, the home with biggest increase in price was the semis at just over 17%. So semis started at less than $1 million at the beginning of the year. And then by November, at some point, they were on average well over $1 million, in the $1.2 million range. So there you have it. I hope you found this information useful and helpful, and it gives you hopefully a perspective of what's gone on in the real estate market for 2021. So if you're thinking of moving anywhere in Toronto or in Canada in general, don't forget to reach out to us, and don't hesitate to reach out to us. We've always got your back. So until next time, this is Pamela Haines from Homes by Pam, helping you with your real estate matters. Although Max, okay.